He slapped me in front of everyone, on his own birthday, and called me nothing. But what he didn't know, I had been holding a secret that could destroy his entire kingdom. For 7 years, he thought he had buried the truth, and my mother with it. 2 weeks later, in a silent courtroom, everything he built began to fall. And when the judge spoke, my father finally understood what real humiliation feels like. The last time my father hit me, it was on his birthday. The house was full of people. His friends, business partners, neighbors who admired him. The living room smelled like expensive perfume and sweet cake. Gold balloons covered the ceiling. A giant banner read, "Happy Birthday to the King." That's what everyone called him. The King. He stood in the center of the room, smiling proudly, shaking hands, accepting compliments like trophies. His suit was dark blue, perfectly ironed. His watch shined under the lights. He looked powerful, untouchable. I stood near the wall, holding a glass of juice I wasn't drinking. I had always felt like a guest in his house, never a son. When it was time to cut the cake, everyone gathered around. Phones came out. Cameras flashed. He put one arm around my shoulder and pulled me close. "Smile," he whispered. I didn't. Not because I wanted to ruin his night, but because I was tired of pretending. Someone from the crowd joked, "You must be proud of your father." Before I could stop myself, the words came out. Proud of what? The room went quiet. My father's hand tightened on my shoulder. His smile didn't move, but his eyes changed. They became cold. Sharp. "What did you say?" he asked softly. I looked at him. At the man everyone respected. The man who controlled everything. "You didn't build this alone," I said. "You just made sure no one else got credit." A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Someone cleared their throat. He laughed loudly, pretending it was a joke. "Kids," he said to the room. "They don't understand sacrifice." But I saw the anger rising in his face. And then, his hand struck my cheek. The sound was louder than the music. For a second, I couldn't hear anything. My ear rang. My face burned. I tasted blood inside my mouth. No one moved. No one spoke. He leaned close to me, his voice low and shaking with rage. "You embarrass me," he whispered. "You're nothing without me." I felt small in that moment. Smaller than I had ever felt as a child hiding behind my bedroom door while he shouted at my mother. But something inside me changed. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just looked at him. And I realized I was no longer afraid. I walked out of the house without saying goodbye. The music started again behind me, awkward and forced. Laughter tried to cover the silence. The night air was cold. It hit my burning cheek, making it sting more. I stood outside the gate for a long time, staring at the house he always called his kingdom. He built everything from nothing. That's what he liked to say. Businesses, properties, respect. But he also built fear. People thought he was strong. A self-made man. A leader. They didn't know what happened behind closed doors. They didn't know how my mother cried in the kitchen when she thought I was asleep. They didn't know why she left when I was 10. They didn't know why there were no pictures of her left in the house. And they didn't know why I never smiled in family photos. 2 weeks later, I stood outside the courthouse. The sky was gray, heavy with clouds. The wind was sharp, cutting through my jacket. My cheek didn't hurt anymore, but my heart still did. I hadn't seen him since that night. Not after I walked away from the house. Not after I made the call that would change everything. The courthouse steps felt cold under my shoes. People walked past me, busy with their own problems, their own battles. Inside those walls, something was about to end. And something else was about to begin. When I finally stepped inside the courtroom, I saw him again. Same expensive suit. Same straight posture. Same controlled expression. But this time, there was a crack in it. His eyes scanned the room until they found me. And for the first time in my life, he didn't look like a king. He looked worried. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of him. He saw me the moment I stepped fully into the courtroom. For a second, his confident posture slipped. His shoulders stiffened. His jaw tightened. "You came," he said quietly as I took a seat a few rows behind him. His voice sounded calm, but I knew him. I could hear the tension hiding underneath. I had to, I replied. The courtroom smelled like old wood and paper. The air felt heavy, like something important was about to happen. Lawyers whispered to each other. Papers shuffled. Shoes tapped against the floor. But all I could focus on was him. 7 years ago, he made his biggest move. After my mother left, he transferred everything into his name. Every property she helped build. Every share in the company they started together in a tiny rented office. He erased her like she never existed. I was 14 when I first understood what was happening. I remember standing in the hallway outside their bedroom. The door was slightly open. I could see my mother sitting on the edge of the bed, holding papers in shaking hands. "You can't take everything," she said. Her voice was breaking. "I worked for this too." My father stood near the window, calm and cold. "I already did," he answered. There was no anger in his tone. That was the worst part. He sounded proud. "You signed the documents," he continued. "You trusted me." She looked at him like she didn't recognize the man in front of her. "I trusted my husband," she whispered. That night, she packed one suitcase. She hugged me in the kitchen while he stayed in his office, pretending he didn't care. "I'll come back for you," she promised. But she never did. And he made sure I believed she abandoned us. For years, he told me the same story. She was weak. She couldn't handle success. She left because she didn't deserve this life. And I believed him. Until I didn't. Back in the courtroom, he leaned slightly toward me without turning his head. "You think this will change anything?" he asked under his breath. His words were sharp, but I could hear something new. Uncertainty. I looked at him carefully. At the small line of sweat forming near his temple. At the way his fingers tapped lightly against his briefcase. "It already has," I said. He didn't know what I had been doing for the past 2 weeks. After the slap, I didn't just walk away. I started searching. I went through old emails, old files, old storage boxes he thought no one would ever open. And then I found something. A folder hidden behind other documents in his private office. Password protected. But he always reused the same passwords. Important dates. Birthdays. Anniversaries. His ego made him predictable. When the screen opened, my hands were shaking. Transfers. Secret accounts. Company funds moved quietly over time. And every illegal move was signed under my mother's name. If anyone ever investigated, she would take the fall. He didn't just take everything from her. He set her up to be destroyed. In court, his lawyer leaned over and whispered something to him. My father nodded, pretending everything was under control. But I knew the truth. For 7 years, he believed he had won. He believed silence meant power. He believed fear meant loyalty. He believed no one would ever challenge him. He turned slightly in his seat and looked at me again. There was anger in his eyes now. But also a question. "What did you do?" he asked quietly. I didn't answer. Instead, I remembered the last conversation I had with my mother before she stopped calling. "Some people think control is love," she told me. "It isn't." At the time, I didn't understand. Now I did. The judge's door opened. Everyone stood up. The room grew silent. My father straightened his tie. He fixed his expression. He put his mask back on. The powerful businessman. The respected leader. The untouchable king. But this time, something felt different. Something felt off. Because for the first time, he didn't know what was coming. And I did. The judge walked in, and the entire courtroom stood up. My father adjusted his jacket and lifted his chin slightly, as if this was just another business meeting he could control. His face looked calm again, but I could see the tightness in his jaw. "Be seated," the judge said. Chairs scraped softly against the floor. Papers moved from one desk to another. The sound felt louder than usual in the quiet room. My father's lawyer stood first. He spoke with confidence, using polished words about success, reputation, and misunderstandings. He described my father as a respected businessman who had built everything through hard work. I almost smiled. I had heard this story my whole life. Then the judge turned to the other side. "Present the new evidence." New evidence. Those 2 words changed everything. A thick file was placed on the table in front of the judge. I watched my father's eyes follow it. Just for a second, his breathing changed. The documents were simple. No dramatic speeches. No shouting. Just facts. Signed contracts. Bank transfers. Account numbers. Hidden movements of company money into personal accounts. All dated 7 years ago. All approved under my mother's name. The judge adjusted his glasses and began reading. The financial transfers appear unauthorized. Signatures inconsistent. Funds redirected without board approval. My father's lawyer interrupted quickly. Your Honor, this must be a mistake. But the judge raised a hand. Sit down. The room felt smaller. Warmer. Like the air was disappearing. 7 years ago, after my mother left, my father didn't just take the properties. He moved company money slowly, carefully, into accounts only he controlled. And he used her identity to do it. If the company had ever been audited, she would have been charged with fraud. She would have gone to prison. He didn't just want to win. He wanted to make sure she could never fight back. What he didn't know was that my mother wasn't weak. Before she packed her suitcase, before she walked out that door, she copied everything. Every email. Every transaction. Every signed file. She stored them safely. And when I turned 18, she met me quietly in a small cafe outside the city. She slid a flash drive across the table. Keep this, she said softly. What is it? I asked. Protection, she replied. Her eyes looked tired that day. Older. Sad. I couldn't fight him then, she told me. But one day, the truth will matter. Wait for the right moment. For years, I kept it hidden. I didn't fully understand it at first. But after he slapped me on his birthday, after he whispered that I was nothing without him, I understood. That was the moment. Back in the courtroom, the judge continued reading. Based on the evidence presented, this court orders an immediate investigation into financial misconduct. All major assets are to be frozen pending further review. Frozen. The word echoed in my head. His companies. His properties. His accounts. Everything he proudly called his kingdom. Frozen. My father slowly turned his head toward me. For the first time in my life, his eyes didn't look powerful. They looked confused. Almost scared. This is ridiculous, he whispered to his lawyer. Fix this. But there was nothing to fix. The truth doesn't disappear just because you shout it. 2 officers stepped closer to him. Not to arrest him yet, but to inform him of the next legal steps. His hands, the same hands that once felt so strong and terrifying, were slightly shaking. He looked at me again. You did this? He asked quietly. There was no anger in his voice now. Only disbelief. I stood up slowly. No, I said calmly. You did. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't smile. I didn't feel joy. I felt something else. Relief. For years, he controlled the story. He controlled the money. He controlled the fear. But he couldn't control the truth. As the officers guided him away to speak privately, the room began to buzz with whispers. The king was no longer untouchable. And as he walked past me, avoiding my eyes, I realized something important. He had taken everything from my mother. But in the end, a judge took everything from him. And this time, he had no one left to slap.